Erp.
Like, Mum, all my friends and members, please.
I want to play sailing. I want to have fun playing sailing.
I'm very glad that every skill
All right. Things are going well
up
on
until now
YouTube.
failed.
They were like, "Oh, my kid's going off to uni. I have to."
Bruh, are you fucking kidding me? I don't know what's going on. Everything else is fine. It's just YouTube being shitty ass fucking terrible YouTube. Gotta love it. Gotta love it.
Send her some moose meat.
Hello everyone and welcome to the official Old School RuneScape podcast where we get to chat shit with JMods and creators alike. I'm Mod Aiza.
And I'm Mod Sween, and this is our chance to get to know the person behind the crown, hear their stories, and hear their experiences. Today we're joined by a very special guest from the Old School RuneScape team.
I am Modelina.
Hey Elena, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good.
We wanted to get you on a podcast pilot, so we did all the way last year, and I think you turned up on the day and we're like, we're so sorry we're running late. You have to wait a while.
Yeah, I think it's been about a year. I think.
About a year and a half.
Wow.
Been a long time. Didn't realise that.
Wait, has it actually been that long?
Been that long.
Oh my god.
So I think we were planning on talking about what it's like going to be working on sailing, because I think a few months prior, the poll concluded at the summit, and then we were like, all right, let's learn about what the project's
That's
going to
not what I
entail.
wanted,
Now,
bro.
the other end.
Like,
Sailing's
genuinely,
almost out of the door.
it didn't even
So,
give me a
Nothing's
full
changed,
screen.
Still working on it.
Still working on it. We'll get into sailing.
Bro,
naturally,
what is
'cause it's such a
going
massive
on with
project.
YouTube?
Let's start right at the beginning. You and kind of RuneScape history.
Well, I started playing when I was, I think, about 13. So like back in the day, true old school player, so to speak.
You were a legal player as well. You didn't lie about your age.
Unless I lied right now.
Okay,
yeah.
I see.
We'll say 13-ish.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you find it? Do you remember?
Like how I discovered it?
Yeah,
or-
yeah.
Yeah, so I think some boys at school were talking about it. They were talking about Run Escape specifically.
Okay.
And I was like, that sounds really cool. And my dad's a gamer. Like, he didn't play Run Escape or RuneScape, but he played other MMOs like EverQuest and stuff like that. And so I'd always sort of been into gaming because of him, and like we'd play together a bit and stuff. And so I was quite keen to try something else. I had a laptop at the time, but I didn't have administrator privileges on my laptop because my mom was like, "Oh no, you can't have the teenager running loose on the internet and installing
Runescape,
stuff."
yeah.
Yeah. But the good thing is, RuneScape ran in the browser at the time, so I didn't have to install it, which was perfect. So I could play as much as I wanted, and so I did. And eventually, she had to like turn off the internet at 11 so that I didn't play all night.
That's quite generous though. 11 p.m. I wish I was allowed to play that late.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Eventually, we had to have the conversation about like, I turned like, I don't know, like 17, 18, and I was like, Mom, I kind of need to be on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, I have homework and stuff. Can we extend that a bit? And
I have
she just
homework.
turned it off. Yeah, I did. On RuneScape. No.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played largely free to play at the time, actually. A funny story, my cousin and I, we played together. He's 4 years younger than me. And I got him hooked on RuneScape as well. And then when we were kids, like, we really wanted to go to Ardoin. And we were both free to play, right? And we couldn't get through the Taverley gates. Like, we were really, really wanting to see what else was out there. And so we borrowed my aunt's phone. She didn't know about it at the time, but back then you could call in and get like a membership code. So we did that. But the only problem was we were kids and our first language isn't English. So we didn't know what 0 was. We knew all the other numbers. We didn't know what 0 was. So we kept calling until we got a number without 0. So we probably bought like 8 memberships and used 2 of them. But yeah, my aunt wasn't very happy. Sorry.
That's actually brilliant. Oh my God. I forgot about paying for membership via the phone. I had the exact same scenario minus the 0. But I think I had about 6 months of membership before my parents looked at the phone bill and saw this payment that kept going out. And they thought that the phone had been hacked. And then were calling up the phone provider, at which point I had to come clean and tell them that it was me. And thankfully, my mom was okay about it. She was like, all right, that's fine. Just let us know next time. So I was pretty fortunate.
Once I was like, no, I did it properly. I prepared the whole spiel. I was like, Mum, all my friends and members, please, do you want me up out on the, like causing no good out on the streets? Or do you want me playing RuneScape every single day? It's only £3.20, please.
Proper sales pitch.
It took me ages to get to Ardevo.
Yeah.
I crossed the mountain and I was like, home, Caverby, see this town. This is it. This is all I want to do.
Honestly,
these little villages.
Yeah.
This is a bit of me.
That's the same.
Yeah.
I don't even remember past that, to be honest, because so much time was spent just at Catherby and Sears Village, especially Sears, chopping maples. I just chop maples all day, every day until I could afford a glory. And then my memory is blank from buying a glory to being at Falador merching whips. And that's how I made money
Okay.
then.
Yeah.
There's something happened in between that
Yeah,
time.
something must have happened. Probably.
Bowstrings.
Yeah, maybe.
You kind of went gradually a bit more southerly. Like,
Yeah.
okay, maples, and then we go to yews, and then bowstrings, and then whatever else in between, magics. I love talking RuneScape memories. It's
Yeah,
like
me
the
too.
equivalent of like just being in the pub and talking about 90s footballers. Like, oh, do you remember Pires? Do you remember bowstrings?
But it's funny because like no one knew how to play in a way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Today you can't really because you know so much about like how you're meant to be playing the game. A
Yeah.
lot of the time you feel like you can't just mess around and like sell bowstrings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you're not going around picking flax because you know like there are so many more efficient ways to do things.
Yeah.
But back then we didn't know how to play efficiently, and so you were just hanging out.
What was the main thing you used to do back when you were hanging out in RuneScape with your cousin?
So mainly I was free to play.
Mhm.
That's most of what I remember. So I would chop yew trees in Edgeville.
Okay.
That was like most of my day. And I got to 99 woodcutting, and then one person in my clan felt so bad for me that I wasn't a member that he gave me membership so I could go buy my cape.
Oh, wow.
So that was
That's
really nice
sweet.
of him.
And then you got to, did that eventually expire? Or was it at that point then you decided to, fraudulently use your aunt's phone?
I think we'd used the phone before that, but
Okay.
I wasn't 99 yet. So I'd had like a taste of membership and then lost it again because
Ooh,
my
that's
aunt
rough.
found out.
Yeah.
And then by the time that I got 99, he paid for it.
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was.
So then we transport time forward. You're no longer a teen. You're now in like what I assume is old school's release. When did you first come back to actual old school?
I think it was around the time that it launched in
Okay.
2013. One of my friends in college, because I was in college at the time, he was talking about how there was a big poll going on
Mhm.
and they're gonna bring it back and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, right, okay, let's do it then. And I realized that back in the day, I hadn't really like gotten into like combat and stuff. Like
Mhm.
I'd done a bit of like grinding hellhounds or something, but I'd never done any bossing or anything like that. So the highlight of me like returning to RuneScape, I know it's probably like some time into it. I don't quite remember when, but it was early days, and we went to Barrows, and I was like,
Ooh,
"This
okay.
is peak! Like this
Yeah.
is RuneScape." You know, that was really cool. And I remember getting a Guthrin spear when it was like 8 or 9 mil.
That was like the token drop. I remember everyone wanted
Yeah.
Guthans because it was like, well, yeah, you'd just be able to just the thought of being able to do all of your tasks or combat and never have to leave and never have to get food. Like it was an incredible feeling then. Nowadays, no one cares about it because like, it's so fast to just get food, eat the food, bank, get back to where you were that you don't even
Yeah.
have to worry about that stuff anymore.
Or even Nightmare Zone and release and just 6 hours logging. Like,
Yeah.
you just, with Gothams, you could do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is true. See, I had a friend who I think he basically was making PK accounts, different builds, and he would 6 hour log Guthans, and even to the point where because I think back then you used to have there was a really specific quest completion like number that you could do and specific quests for the best NPCs that came in
Yeah.
there. He made an alt account to host Nightmare Zone games for his accounts to then 6 hour log, and he was like, "Dude, you should do it. You should do it. It's so easy to set up." But like the thought of having to have this specific quest list done was enough of a blocker for me to never do it. So I never 6 hour logged in Nightmare Zone for the entirety of it being available in game before it was changed. I look back now and think how stupid I was. 'Cause I really should have.
The quest list was so easy.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do
I know.
well.
I know. Literally, I look back into it and I was just like, yeah, why didn't I do this? It would have taken me half an hour to set up.
Not necessarily though, because that was before Quest Helper and stuff. So you had to rely on the wiki or like
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah, but there were still early, easy quests though, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah, that's
Still
fair.
had sleigh music.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's just
So-
me being lazy.
So you came back for the poll. You got your spear, and then you played consistently through to like joining Jagex, or with any breaks and stuff in between.
Yeah, a couple of breaks, but like nothing major.
Yeah.
I always came back. I vividly remember watching like Boti and Dalek Cookie around the time as well. They were like big inspirations for me. And then when Zolra came out, I remember like I wanted to do Zolra for the Western Elite Diary, I think, or is it Hard Diary? Forget now which one it is, but one of them. You need to get 1 kill. And I was adamant on not cheesing it. I wanted to learn the boss, and it was really painful. I kept dying a lot, but I think back to that moment now, and I think like that's when I really like it clicked for me how like PVM really works.
Yeah.
I'd done Barrows, it was fun, but I didn't really like get. I don't know, like
Mechanics.
I didn't get it, you know. But something clicked when I started learning Zolra, and ever since then I've been really hooked on PVM. When I was in uni, I started like going for harder and harder stuff. So like doing all the bosses, doing like solo trips in different places. When Chambers came out, I started learning how to solo that. I eventually got my Infernal Cape, and then eventually I got a job here. And since then, I haven't really played that much. Like it's been on and off for a bit, but yeah, I think at least the last year, I haven't really played much.
So a common thing we've heard from JMods is that you say you're not playing much, but actually because you're making content and then you're going in and you're seeing if it works, and then going out and then tweaking it and then going back in and seeing if it works, you're actually probably playing more than ever.
So I am spending a lot of my day looking at the game, but I'm not so much playing it as like testing very specific things,
Sure.
right? It's very rare that we actually play it as a player would.
Yeah.
It happens like maybe like an hour a week. But I think there is a correlation between like how much you work on the game versus like how much you want to play it when you're done at work and you go home. Especially with like working on sailing, it's been quite a tough project in terms of like there's a lot of pressure on the project to do well, both from the players and from the company as well. And of course, like we're players ourselves. Like we want to do a good job because we know that, you know, I want to play sailing. I want to have fun playing sailing. So that makes me motivated to do a good job of making it. But in turn, if I've spent all my energy on like focusing on making this really great at work that day, then I go home. I don't really want to look at the game. Some days I do it, some days I don't. So it varies.
In terms of working on sailing, you said it's been a particularly tough project. I know it's been going on for quite some time now. What would you say out of all of that time, and there's two parts to this, your most enjoyable part of working on sailing, and then the flip side of that, what has been the least enjoyable part?
I think the most enjoyable was seeing players try it for the first time at RuneFest. That was a highlight for me because until then, we'd only shown brief moments of sailing. We'd shown like clips here and there. We'd talked about it a bit in blogs, but we were in a state of development where we were like, we want to show more, but everything's so rough around the edges that we don't really think that it's going to like give a good perception of what sailing actually is going to look like. So we'd rather hold off until it looks a bit better so that like players can get a more realistic view of what it's going to be. And at the time of RuneFest, we were like, you know what, it's pretty good. And we want to validate like how the boats move and stuff like that. We want to make sure that people feel involved in that process. And we still want feedback, right? Like it's not like we're being quiet because we don't want to hear from anyone. We still want player input. So we were like, okay, let's let them try it at RuneFest. But the cool part is we didn't tell anyone. We didn't tell the players that we were going to do this. So in the opening of RuneFest, there was a bit at the end where we were like, oh yeah, and by the way, you can try sailing here today. And that was really cool. We saw a bunch of people just like run to the computers after.
That place got swarmed instantly, I remember.
Yes,
And
yeah.
you dressed up as a pirate as well, which is very cool.
Yeah, I did. I kind of regret doing the hat though, because you can't really see my
Oh,
face.
it was a big hat.
Yeah, it was a big hat. I really enjoyed RuneFest. And I've never done a RuneFest as a JMod before. So I did one in 2019 before I joined the company as a player. And it was really weird going back and like being recognized. It was strange. but fun.
RuneFest is always an absolute blast, and I swear, like, you go into it and you just never know what to expect, but also at the same time, you kind of like have an understanding of what's going to happen. But I think the part where you don't expect is just the sheer kind of like volume of interactions that you have there, the amount of people that will recognize you and want to come up and chat to you and all that. And I want to ask you more about RuneFest, but I'm going to hold on to it because I want to hear the bad, and then we'll bring it back
Oh,
and maybe
yeah,
bring some
yeah.
joy into it from RuneFest again.
I have a funny story as well. Remind me when we go back to that topic.
Okay.
It's about going undercover.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
so
undercover.
we'll get back to that one.
All right.
In terms of the
Incognito Elena.
in terms of the bad stuff on sailing, I wouldn't say it's like necessarily bad, but we've definitely had some parts in development where we're like, yeah, we shouldn't have done it that way, or like we should have chosen a different strategy, right? And that's meant that like either we're a bit delayed, or like that it's just been like a tough conversation to have sometimes in terms of like, okay, how do we solve this problem, right? So I think one thing that we did quite early was we wanted to like way in the beginning, like when we started the project or we started developing it. So sailing's past the pole. We know we're doing sailing. Now we actually need to make the thing. I remember we tried to scale up a bit too fast. So before that, we'd had myself and Husky and Mod Curse and Mod Gecko and Mod Light. Like that was the team doing the sort of refinement of the skill. But at that point, we were like, okay, well, now we need to make the thing. So we need more people to help us make the thing. So we got an engineer on, and we got a few more designers and QA as well. The problem that we had was that we hadn't prototyped enough yet. So we were trying to figure out, like, okay, how do boats work? How should they work? What feels old school in terms of like we're creating a whole new move set here, like a way of moving a big entity. And that needs to feel different to moving a player. But how do you make something new but still make it feel old school? So that was a really big challenge for us. And at the same time, we were trying to create islands because we knew that like regardless of how you move the boat, we know that you're going to move the boat.
Yeah.
So you
need
can
somewhere
make
to
the
move to.
content where you're going to move to. So we tried to do that at the same time, and it was just too much to handle at once. And we weren't able to really like do both effectively at the same time. So I would say that was a bit of a mistake just in terms of like, development process, I suppose. And going back, like if we were to do it again, I would prototype with a smaller team first and really nail like the tech side of things. And once we're confident, then I would scale up a bit more.
I mean, that doesn't sound like too bad, to be honest. It's actually quite a positive in the sense that, yeah, you figured something out wasn't working, you've learned from it, and you'll be able to use that now moving forward, which is really awesome. I do remember at the time, actually, even I felt quite overwhelmed as like a sidearm supporting the Project Free community with Light, where there was just so much going on all at once, and everyone seemed to have their own kind of like directions that they were going in, understandably, because you told to design some really awesome content. But then having that with the whole complication of how the boats would work, and if the boats would work the way we wanted to, would it interact the way that it needed to, and all that. So I'm happy that actually things turned out the way that they did.
It was such a big pressure on getting that to work as well, because we couldn't really do anything else like boat related. Like I said, we could do the islands because we knew that we were going to go there, but we couldn't do like, how do you get XP on the boat? Because we didn't even know how the boat would move yet and what the player would be required to do. So there were a lot of layers that we couldn't really get to yet until we had the foundations in place.
I guess that explains quite a lot in terms of, and I'll just say, I know that there are other reasons as well that are mostly from me at times, which we can probably talk about later on too. But there was a big period of almost silence, right, in terms of updates for sailing, where the skill had passed the pole and you started working on it, but then there was nothing to be shared. And I know like one of those reasons is sharing prototypes is risky, and we want to have stuff that's polished and ready. We saw that even with releasing footage, in early alpha stages and in the marketing materials or videos to talk about what we're doing, and everyone's like, "Oh, the boats look like shit." Like, yeah, they're meant to. It's not finished, but like that's what everyone always just like hammers down to. If this is what the skill's going to look like, then I don't want it. I'm like,
Yeah.
It's not what the skill's going to look like. Please work with us. Like, we want to work with you. Yeah, but obviously, a lot of that time is I now understand, or hopefully, listeners will understand that it's actually because you were going through all this process of figuring out those prototypes, figuring out boat movement, making sure that boats work the way they needed to, because that's the core fundamental of the skill, right?
And in terms of like visuals as well, you might say that the visuals don't matter for how the boats move, but we didn't really want to commit to how the boats look until we had a better understanding of that. Because and initially, like some of the first boat assets we made, like art wise, was in we called it the bathtub eventually because it had really high edges and it looked more like that traditional sort of like a big sailboat basically, but kind of like shrunk together a little bit. And it ended up being really annoying to sail because it was too big. It was too tall as well. The very first one had a staircase. If you wanted to go between like the wheel where you're steering and the sails to trim the sails, you had to click a staircase and then go down to do it. And that was just annoying, right? And so we learned a lot about the layouts of the boat by just prototyping. But if we'd finished those assets and made them look really pretty and then decided, actually, we don't want it to work this way, then all of that time making those pretty assets would have gone to waste.
It's interesting about showing visuals early on because we've done it with other content. I remember the first time we showed the Sepulchre on stream, grey boxed entirely. Projectiles like the swords and stuff were bots, bot characters just walking towards, and players loved it because I think the Sepulchre didn't carry like the weight of expectation and even like the impact it's going to have on a game. Whereas sailing, divisive anyway, just for like because of the polling process, and some players don't want the skill. It means that players want to see like brilliance from day one.
Yeah,
which is tough to manage for a game that's like, okay, we poll everything.
And I get the skepticism, right? Because like it's a game that people have put hours and hours of time into, and people naturally get a bit protective of that. Like I'm protective of the game. I don't want it to go in a direction I don't want. So I don't blame players for caring too much about it, right? Like it's totally natural.
No, right on. I mean, there's loads of valid reasons why some people might not want sailing. They might not like the way we polled it. They might have didn't like the way we polled it versus shamanism. They might not have liked they might not believe that sailing is the right skill, or maybe even that like we could deliver it to a high quality, even though they might want it. They might not want a new skill full stop. Like Old School's been out for 12 years. Why do we need a new skill? 12 years has been fine. So I get loads of valid reasons. We polled it, we've done like the kind of due process. Now we need to make sure we deliver something good.
The thing is, as well, as like I think that there's a bit of a misconception within the community at times in that we just dismiss negative feedback and ignore it. And maybe like that's a signal that we need to do better at addressing the negativity and acknowledging it more so. But I mean, you can attest, hopefully, for the countless conversations we've had around, you know, the negativity that we've seen, the skepticism that we've seen, and how we can best, you know, work towards bringing those people on board and taking into account their views and making sure that the skill is developed in a way with them in mind, as well as the people that are really looking forward to it. Because we know that there are so many people that are looking forward to sailing now. I mean, look at the poll results of late. Everything's passing with flying colours. There's a huge amount of positivity, which is awesome to see, but it wasn't always like that.
So I guess we haven't talked too much about it, but we have this group of players who are under NDA. Some of them have been there from like way back when the skill first passed. Even before that, when we were just talking about making a new skill, we would like send them our pitches for different types of skills and just be like, hey, does this sound feasible? Like, would you guys want this kind of thing? And when sailing passed the poll, we actually brought in more people, and we intentionally invited people who voted no to sailing to get their perspectives as well. Because even though they voted no, they still have a vested interest in making it the best it can be. Because at that point, the skill is coming to the game. So at that point, they just want to make it the best it can be, despite them not initially wanting it.
And how have you found that worked?
Pretty well, actually. It's been healthy, I think, to be a bit challenged by those kind of like, I wouldn't say it's negative, right? Because it's just an opinion. Like I didn't want sailing for one reason or another. But I think ultimately that's made it into a better skill. Because if you listen to that criticism, it might be that like, I don't like sailing because I think it's not integrated enough because you're just going on the sea, so you're not like interacting with the existing game world. So we're like, okay, let's double down on the islands. Let's like tie more skills into it, right? Like we're definitely trying to address that feedback.
I mean, I see that. I know you've worked really hard on it, which has been awesome to see. I think it's got to a point now where like I would probably say that the only really negative or criticizing opinions are those that people just don't have anything constructive left to say, you know, why they don't want the skill. It's just a case of they don't want a new skill, period. And in those instances, unfortunately, there's not a huge amount that we can do. But before then, yeah, countless hours spent trying to make sure that everyone's opinion was taken into account and that feedback was brought on board. I'm glad you brought up the NDA group as well, because they have been fantastic.
They've been so
really,
good.
really helpful.
Yeah, for sure. We've done a few like play tests with them as well, where like they've gotten to try sailing at various stages, and it's been so valuable. Like just hearing their different perspectives, because it's not just like there's some yes and no voters. There's also people of like different skill levels, right? So like you have some like really talented players in there, and then you have players who like haven't put that much time into it, or some people who are just mainly into skilling versus some people who are more into like PBM stuff, and just making sure that we have a good variety of players in there to give a good varied amount of feedback.
So, I mean, it sounds reasonable. I know there'll be people listening to this being like, oh, great. So they're just making sailing for Reddit Andy. But yeah, sure.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I mean, I don't want to name any names, but like, I know who's in that group, and we have people who are front pages, right? 200 mil alls, max players, mid-level players, casual players, because that's a representative of everyone, right? We have so many different types of people, styles of players, and trying to bring them all together was an interesting challenge in its own right. But I'm glad that it worked out well and that, you know, they've stuck with it and helped us out. How would a player ever get involved in a playtest?
So from what I remember, we put out some surveys about like, would you be interested basically in giving more feedback and like being part of this group? I suppose like keep an eye out for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure that with this being successful, with us like working with the NDA group for sailing, I can imagine we'll probably want to do something similar for future projects as well. Maybe at a smaller scale, but I think that stuff would always be useful.
As a developer, then, to like add on to that a little bit, how much value do you put into kind of like the big posts that we see on social, normally on Reddit? You know, like someone has put together a design for a piece of content, whether it be sailing or any other updates. Do you ever think that that would help someone's chances of being involved in a playtest, or outside of playtest, just how valuable do you find those kind of like larger posts?
Yeah, that can absolutely help as well. So like without spoiling or like revealing names again, like we have a few people in that group as well by invite, specifically because of their history with that kind of stuff. So yeah, that stuff is definitely useful as well. If we see that like you have a keen eye for details, or like that you care deeply about the topic that we're presenting, right? We're going to want you in there, most likely.
A last question before I let Sween take the reins for a little bit more. You ever worked with a player that you really regret working with? You just think, you know what, those ideas were terrible. What have we done?
Have you?
Do you know what? Yes, but it's most likely been creators. More often than not, you'll find that they have an agenda that suits the type of content that they want to make, which is completely understandable. And in the early days of working at Jagex, I really struggled to see past that. And I would always think of it as that, no, they know what's right. They're doing this for their job. And there was probably a few times where I favored that feedback a little bit too hard in terms of pushing it forward. I look back now and I'm like, I'm glad that I can be way more level-headed and look at it more objectively than I used to. So yeah, but individual player, no, not one that jumps to mind, but there are a few creator names that I could throw out there.
Nice. Well, hopefully I bought you some time for your answer.
Yeah, thank you for that. I wouldn't say there's like one specific player, to be honest. Most of the players have been really good to work with, and you're not going to like this answer, but as a developer, I can rely on CM to kind of deal with the conversations with the players if I don't want to interact with them.
Why wouldn't I like that? That's lovely. That keeps me in a job. Thank you, Ellie.
That's true. So Modlight's been amazing with that kind of stuff. Like,
Good.
She's been managing that group a lot, the NDA group. And so like it's good for us to be involved, because then like myself or Husky or anyone on the sailing team can just jump in and ask very specific questions. But in terms of like generally managing that group, like answering FAQs and stuff like that, we rely on Modlight a lot.
I've got a memory. I don't know if it's fake or not. So I'd like some clarity.
Here we go.
No. It's nothing outlandish.
Sween's fever dream.
Sailing wasn't in the original lineup of polls, right? Of skills to poll against. I remember it was shamanism, it was taming. And then there was this massive nebulous beast called exploration, which was like sailing plus every other way you can get around and do anything you want. And then we were like, we can't do that. That's mental. We cut that. And then eventually, I think we added sailing.
Internally, that is true.
Yeah.
But that was never player facing.
No, I know. Yeah.
So the three that we pitched to the community was sailing, shamanism, and taming. But yes, we did have like huge rounds of trying to assess like which different skills to offer. We'd done some surveying as well to just ask players like, what kind of skill would you be interested in? Like, do you want it to be a production skill or a gathering skill or utility skill? And what we saw this pattern, right, where they would usually pick the most like vague, open answer. So like in that case, it was utility, because utility could be anything. And then we asked like, do you want it to be a moneymaker? Do you want it to be like, I don't know, like really grindy, like that kind of stuff? And answers would be all over the place, right? Like a bit of everything. We're like, okay, great. That narrows it down, right?
It's like Homer Simpson designing that car. If anyone remembers that episode.
Is that the car that eventually made it into Simpsons Hit and Run? Was that his dream car? I think it is.
Probably did.
Yeah, with the dome window. It's like purple and green. It's got all the everything in it. Yeah, I do remember.
I never connected those dots. Yeah,
he made it for his brother's company, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then he bankrupted him. Anyway.
He did.
Anyway, sailing.
Oh, there's so many memories coming back now. Sorry. So back to sailing.
Yeah, or like not sailing, to be honest. Exploration and all the other skills we explored as well. So we had I guess a bit of a funny story around shamanism, actually, because that was quite a popular one with the community. Where it started,
on my chest.
Yeah, we both voted for it.
Where it started was we wanted to do a different type of magic. So we have magic in the game, and we have prayer, which isn't really magic, but it's kind of magical in a way, like the effects that you get. But we know that there are like types of magic that the player can do. So like, there's the nature spirit, for example, in Mauritania. He does some crazy like nature magic. And we're like, could we do something like that? And we were like, well, if we're doing more of a nature type magic, it's probably like druidism or something, right? And we were like, well, we have the druids in Taverley, and they're more related to herb lore. And also, our players like edgy stuff. So what's an edgy version of druidism? Shamanism. So that's how that came about.
I remember being in that call, actually.
yeah. But we explored tons of different stuff. So like, when we looked at taming, we looked at other stuff like, could we do some sort of like shape shifting? Could that be interesting? Because players love being like a monkey with a grease, right? That's always fun when you turn it into something else. Like, could that be an interesting skill? Lots of exploration into different stuff. We knew that exploration was a popular player suggestion, but we really struggled to narrow it down into like a core loop that felt like you could reasonably repeat it.
Yeah.
Because in exploration, like you only explore something once. Once it's explored, how do you do that again? And so that was really difficult to make into a skill without, turning it into some sort of like procedural generated stuff, which we could do. But we were a bit scared of doing that because of the tech, like the tech implications of it. I say that, and then we went to sailing.
And then you decided to do sailing with like boats that are in separate instances and whatnot else, technical nonsense.
But I think as well that link would be people would then compare it to dungeoneering. And in those surveys we put to players, I do remember we asked about other older skills, and dungeoneering, whilst always had like a nice little niche cult following, no one was really like, yeah, totally, that's the one.
Yeah, it was never seen in that way.
We did look at the RuneScape skills as well, because we were like, well, dungeoneering is well liked, but it doesn't feel that much of a skill, at least to me. I think maybe if we split up the levels that you can delve into and put them around the world, it would feel a bit more natural. But we looked at like archaeology, which did really well in RuneScape. But ultimately, we figured that I think for old school's first new skill, it deserves something unique. I don't want to necessarily take what RuneScape did and just old schoolify it like we do with some content. And I'm not saying we can't do that in the future. I think archaeology would fit really well. But I think for the first one, it deserves its own thing.
In that topic, because you brought up I actually completely forgot about exploration until you mentioned it there. And then I know we had the discussions around it, and some people were probably maybe listening and wondering why sailing even made it to the board then in that instance. But if I remember correctly, when we were initially surveying in terms of skills, the number one suggestion that came back on multiple surveys was sailing in terms of a skill that we should pitch. And I'm pretty sure that in one of the meetings that we had, it was a case of we simply cannot go out there and not offer sailing with how much demand that there has been for it. We just need to figure out how it would work. But we'll worry about that when it comes to the pitches because we have some really solid skills to go forward with. And that's kind of like how sailing made it into it, is because there was an overwhelming level of support for sailing, even if at the time it was seen as a meme.
That's why I find it interesting when people feel like, well, obviously they put sailing in and they made it happen because they wanted to do it this entire time. When we were really close, they're not